Thank you very much for inviting me for this conference. I, of course, must first at the upfront say that there are certain difficulties. Like I have on my right somebody who really finds the government regulation to be obnoxious. We have an intellectual who has shown us through graphs as to how the economy of the country has changed by lowering of the regulations, and rightfully so. And we have a free spirit who has written intellectually so many books and who can speak his mind. So I'm none of those. And I'm also constrained by the camera looking at me so so focusedly. So I have to walk the tightrope between all these gentlemen from the various walks of life and still try and make some sense of what I wanted to say. So I would, being a bureaucrat, so I would like to deliberate on what I have been asked to say in say 3 paragraphs. I might forget the questions that you've asked me. So in case I don't remember by the time I finish the questions that I was supposed to answer during the course of my delivery, please do remind me, and during the question answer session I shall do so. My understanding from a theoretical perspective, then I'll go into the practical perspective and the problems that I faced during the course of my service and maybe some incidents that I faced. These will be the 3 paragraphs that I'll talk about. Firstly, the theoretical perspective, which I think, Mayurji explained so well, that we are, we probably started as a social contract theory. That, mostly I think we really built on the theory of either Marx or Nietzsche, saying that everybody is bad. People are going to hurt each other. There will be inequalities. People don't know what is good for them. And then when people are signing up as a social contract to be part of the state, the government has to ensure these 2 things, that whatever it is doing for the welfare of all the people. And second, whatever it's doing is for the good of all the people. So we are assuming some things here that, people don't understand environment. They'll say, okay, let's build a road through Kaziranga. They don't know what is the impact if a tiger is lost. They don't know the impact if water is removed from the earth at a very fast pace. They don't know the impact of the use of electricity. So one is assuming that people don't know. Maybe it is incorrect, maybe partially correct, because information flow or need to actually therefore make a policy which is good for all the people, therefore makes the role of a government into a regulator. Now, is regulation necessary? I don't think is perhaps the question that one has to ask, because the government doesn't exist if there is no regulation. The question is as to how did we, from an over-regulated kind of an environment, go towards self-regulation. That is probably a more appropriate framework in which we will work. And of course, I recall, like, when we started off as this service in the 90s, it was completely a my-bap kind of a sarkar. In a sense, I don't recall ever telling, when I used to deal with, say, in the industry department or the tax department, I would ever think of, doing anything other than regulation. In the sense, I would decide as to which industry will be set up, what is good for the people, what should be their profit margin, what should be the tax that they have to pay. So we would decide. And then the very prospect that somebody will come and debate with us would be like, unthinkable in those days. So I think, we started off like that. And then, like, slowly we have been put into place, saying that, you don't know the market. There are better people who understand the economics more than you. So that's how it started. So, and I also would like to begin by saying in the theoretical framework that I had also thought that, economic liberalization as such does not have a basis unless and until there is a cultural, a social, and perhaps a political liberalization. I think any social scientist, and any of you know, that there are 4 quadrants that everyone really analyzes as to what is the culture of the place, what is the social interactions of the place, how is the policy running, and therefore how is the economy running. Of course, we probably give importance to the economic substructure, as you say, but without liberalization of the other three things. Like, for example, if he had not said that there shouldn't be sati, or whether there is, untouchability, or there is social, those kind of things, if he did not have those kind of liberalizations, then we wouldn't have had a nation at all in the first place. But then we have, I will not talk about obviously the political or the social or the cultural kind of regulations, but the economic regulations on the theoretical level today are extremely essential, whether it's health in terms of drugs, in terms of environment and pollution, in terms of ensuring the price of food, which is essential for our survival, what is required for your electricity in case everyone starts charging what they want. You will not be in a position most of the industries won't survive, and most of the households won't survive unless and until there's regulation, of the rates of electricity. So we started as a regulator, over-regulated economy, but today we have regulatory boards in which we have tried to make it independent of the government. So today we have independent regulatory boards. What should be the electricity that a household should pay? What should be the food prices what should be the MRP that has to be there? What are the prices of the essential commodities that have to be there? So these are things which are now become independent regulatory. What is the telecom charges that you have to pay? Right? So these are very essential. And then when you are purchasing a medicine, whether that medicine is of the quality or not, who will decide? Now, if you leave it to the private sector to decide that, what should be the quality, what should be the expiry period, what should be the price, most of the drugs actually are ridiculously low price, but they are sold at a very, very high price. So then the people and the population is left to market risk. We are left to, the private sector. So therefore, there is a role of the government as far as regulation is concerned. But these regulations have increased up to 20,000 compliances. Now, I completely sympathize with my friend on my right when, I think that it's a miracle that industry is performing. It is nothing short of a miracle when I look at, I had a friend of mine who actually set up a company which was brought by San Diego, which is picked up by Vijay Mallya and, United Spirits, etc. And he once, when I was working in south of India, he came to my room and started crying inconsolably. I said, what happened? He said, a labor inspector visited my office. I said, seriously? He said, but you are a person worth 500 crores. Why are you crying like this? He said, close down the factory. And there's no recourse to him. There was no recourse to him. I recall myself, when I was myself, I was looking after food in the south of India. I came across a case against me where a criminal case was instituted, and I was called to defend myself in the court of law, in the Chief Judicial Magistrate Court. Why? Because about 10 years ago, somebody was not paid in a godown, which did not exist now, and that person was not paid his minimum wages, and therefore, the case went on, and finally, just before sentencing me to the jail, the judge was kind enough to call me to the court. And I did not even know that the case existed. And the labor inspector there looked at me very, very authoritatively. That time I was not the principal secretary labor. So I was on the other side of the table. And then he looked at me and said, okay, fine, maaf kar denge aapko. Next time you do it. So I can see how businessmen, what would be the plight of the businessmen in a regulatory compliance. But having said that, let me say that the government has taken a number of steps. And there were 20,000 compliances approximately that were supposed to be there both in the central and the state. And they have been reduced now to about 5,000 compliances. Every state is doing something called the ease of doing business. And let me say that our government is also, though we were not really high on the ease of doing business, like the south of India, the number of days it takes to set up an industry in our state is probably 10 times more than some of the advanced states. Now, the reason is because, of various reasons, getting a land in place, getting the electricity connection, getting a water connection, getting a labor inspector to visit you. The number of things that a person goes through is tremendous. So, we are working on that, and the reduction and to help in reducing the regulation has been said by the very top political policy spaces. One is to eliminate. There are many acts and rules in the government which were made during the British time and are continuing, and then under which we can penalize anybody, and we don't know why they exist. So one is to remove all those regulations. Second is, one is elimination, repealing, digitizing, amending, right, and decriminalization. Like, if an industrialist today in the labor department, he doesn't put up a notice saying that 4 workers are working, I can actually send him to jail. I mean, for something so simple, like, basically, there is so much of vulnerability as far as the industry sector is concerned. So decriminalizing these acts is something that the government is taking up. So this is the theoretical perspective as far as what we have been doing. Now, coming to what is happening practically, regulation, we require regulation to protect you. We always say we require regulation to protect you. If you don't have regulation, the taxi person will charge you anything he wants to. Tomorrow, if you don't have a regulation, right from the religious places to the taxi person to the person who will assist you in getting the land certificate done, everybody will will take the citizen for a ride. So there has to be regulation so that this regulation is for your protection, but the regulation cannot become a devil in your life. So how do we really ensure that the regulation becomes independent, it becomes fair, and in many of the countries, like whether it's New Zealand or Australia, you have extremely efficient regulators, but not overpowering like in India. So how do we go about doing that is something. Now, I would just like to mention, for example, some of the things that I had seen. For example, when I was in taxation department, and he was saying how he has only 1 week where he pays taxes, and I noted that point because I was commissioner tax. I was only hoping it was not that during the time he was he was in trouble, because I was the one who took the state from VAT into GST. I don't know whether he faced it during that time, but the Honorable Chief Minister then, Mr. Tarun Gogoi, asked me that question. He told me, Kalyan, etu huna, ami tax to badabo lage, ami state to mane swavambi koribo lage, apni muk koba ki etu silver bullet to ki ase, ami revenue to kene ko ami bodam, etu muk koba sun. So I used to go to his residence that used to be there at Koinadhara, and I used to sit there and say ki tumi koba ji lage didim tumak etu koba sun. So I said, sir, ki lage mane sir, koise ki lage manu lage niki kwa ki lage kwa kiman kini inspector lage koisu sir mok mane apni etu kole beyan apapuni ki sir koise ki poor man is not there, so I'm taking the liberty maybe of exaggerating, please excuse me on that. But I told him ki sir jiman tax pe inspector ase etu alop adha korile moi besi kori dim tax. Koise hoy niki koise ki sir etu mane amar jiman kini manu ase আমার যেটো ট্যাক্সটো দিয়ে এটা কেনেকো ট্যাক্স নিদিব লাগে আমার মানুষবোৰ কয় স্যার আপনি এটা সেলফ রেগুলেট করে দিও. Then actually I'm not saying this, this is not meant to say anything wrong against the tax inspector, but this is something I told him. So he said, acha tenako do you think that the amar jibur assessees ase hiyotak mari nije tax dile to hiyot dibone hosake dibone amar mane hesa na thakile. So I told him, sir, apni mane to bhoy kwabo ami lom kintu pisod ami yedi kiba gandagol pale moi 10 guna tax to lom. To koisu ami self regulate korok, you do the self regulation kintu tar pispini mane eta scorpion or sting to rakho ki apni yedi bhul korile kintu apnak mane moi bishwas kori asu kintu apni bishwas to bhangile kintu moi 10 guna mane ki kori moi na jano. Etu koi diyo kar. So hobo moi jano etia, he would say ki moi janu boli. So that's what he said. So that is one thing that we definitely, government has to move away from being a player, as our co-panelists have said, that from being a player to being an honest referee, and for being a distant referee, maybe to digital means, is what we need to do as far as regulation is concerned. In fact, another question was asked with regard to labor, as to in labor, what do? We have tried to reduce the 29 labor acts into now 4 codes. We are hoping that, we don't, we completely decriminalize and we'll do it. And one more question was asked. So what did we do during COVID time? So many people came as migrants. So that time we did do a lot of things, and I don't want to go into the details because I remember sitting with the current chief minister who was very concerned ki amar okhomia manu kenako ase, and then we tried to find out their locations and money to them. And I was in charge of that particular operation. So in a sense, sometimes government does work. So, so please don't take it that we don't work. We work actually 24/7. I am not saying we are very effective, but we do work, and the paradigm has shifted, and we are working very hard. And let me assure you that one of the things that you have said has touched the strings, and I intensely feel the same. That while we do deregulation, it's a skilling. I look after skilling. Is that the trust factor is the most important factor. See, today when we talk about Indians, and that could be very cultural, because we have this concept that not in my backyard, whether it is garbage or whether it is trouble or whether it is responsibility, it is not in my, it is outside, it is somebody else's responsibility. So that is something which we think is something that we must instill. If at all, if a regulator has to be successful, even regulators. Now these regulators, some of these analysis, probably the intelligent people who are consultants will say that the regulators sometimes get compromised. See, if the regulators were not compromised, then the rich won't become richer and the poor won't remain. From $1 to now 50% of people get $2. But then we have moved the goalpost as far as poverty is concerned, and therefore I won't be surprised if you say today that 50% are still very poor, even today. And then post-liberalization, the difference in the actual Gini coefficient or the inequality has increased substantially. It's not that liberalization and deregulation has resulted in people becoming better. People have become slightly better, but those who are billionaires have become much bigger. And we have still a huge amount of people who are unemployed or who are just living on the edge. So it's not that liberalization has really helped. And therefore, in addition to government not being trouble and allowing the animal spirits of the economy to go, to being honest referees, there is a role for also the people and the private sector to play in terms of taxation. I have a number of ideas with regard to what we need to do in terms of social policy, in terms of progressive taxation, maybe in terms of inheritance taxation, where we can bring all the stakeholders together. So I will only end by saying, I have a number of experiences right from SDO Civil till DC, till food administration, to environment. And my experiences in food and environment were particularly very poignant. And I understand the business perspective because I was made in charge of sending food grains to the northeast from East Godavari through Bangladesh. And I remember the amount of trouble that I had to face because I had objection from the roads department of our country, the other country, objection from the customs department, objection from the external affairs department, just to get food grains to the northeast. I mean, the kind of pressures and troubles that we had to go. In order for the security of the country, and I'm sending food to the northeast through Bangladesh, not through the chicken neck. It took lot of effort. So we understand, but it's only these kind of conferences, and a lot of learning in these conferences happens even for the officers, and therefore, like being in these conferences, learning from there. As the French Revolution, Merji was talking, it started in coffee shops. It started in conferences like these. It started like, where equality, liberty, and fraternity were really discussed and made, became the yardstick for democratic governance. It happens in these kind of conferences, and this is where we learn. And so while I am on the other side, and I don't have the pains that the others are experiencing, but I do understand the sensitivity that if our country has to do well, then we have to deregulate or self-regulate. And we have to do it in a in a manner in which the people are not affected. The people are protected, there is equity, there is public good, and still we give freedom to people like the industrialists to do well. And for that, what Marji said is that we have to have first develop in us the culture of trust, the culture of giving. And I think, social and cultural liberalization will be the edifice, will be the foundation on which the rest of the things will follow. Thank you.